An atheist friend of mine, who is a former leader of his church youth group, thinks the concept of hell is brutal coercion, and if God is good, there is no way he would create a hell. Would you agree with him? Does the concept of hell offend your senses? Hi, I'm Kirk, and I'm a scientist and a philosopher and a person who spends a lot of time thinking about the why questions in life. So if you're interested in discussions pertaining to God, science, and life, then please subscribe to my channel here, where I'll be posting on a regular basis. You can also subscribe to my social media accounts, and the links are below. It's pretty hard to imagine anything worse than eternity in hell. At first glance, it seems like the ultimate coercion tool to get people to follow a religion. I'm a philosopher by training, and as such, I have thought a good deal about hell and find that it cannot be simply dismissed. In fact, I have arrived at a somewhat startling and disturbing inference. Even if no one had ever thought of the idea of hell, pure rational thinking seems to indicate it may actually be required if a flawlessly good God exists and certain other conditions are in place. I'd like to work through my thinking with you here. I think we could probably agree with the basic premise that a good person, when they encounter an evil person who is harming others, will try to either help rehabilitate the evil person, or, if that's not possible, at least attempt to restrain or limit the harm done. This seems to be a fundamental premise of our justice systems in the West. For first offenders, a rehabilitation approach is often taken. For dangerous offenders who represent an ongoing danger to the public and show no interest in rehabilitation, then our justice system confines them for the purpose of limiting the harm they can do to others. So I think we could grant premise number one, and that is this: a good person will either try to rehabilitate or restrain an evil person. A second premise that I find most people seem to agree with is that we are not flawlessly pure and good. We seem to have an awareness that there's a difference between how we ought to behave and how we actually behave. Consequently, I have asked a huge number of people over the years if they think that they've ever done anything wrong, and almost virtually all of them unanimously say yes, even if it's just saying things like that they had wished they hadn't said that maybe hurt somebody, or maybe harboring resentment against another person even if they didn't tell that person. The question is, though, just how far short of flawless purity, rightness, and justice do we fall? That is hard to judge because we tend to compare ourselves with ourselves, and by that standard, most of us are probably reasonably decent people. The problem is that we are comparing ourselves with others who are not perfect either. After all, if vultures only compared their personal hygiene with other vultures, they would all think themselves pretty decent, even if they had just been feeding on a rotting carcass. On a more objective scale, how good has humanity been, say, for the planet? Is nature better off because we live here? How much have we improved the well-being of the galaxy? If there was a civilization of extraterrestrials out there somewhere who were flawlessly beautiful and good, who had never even thought of the concept of evil and injustice, what would you think they think of us? When you stand outside of humanity, just off planet as it were, and see what we have done to the planet, and the wars that we have fought between ourselves, and the personal drama that unfolds every day, and the hurt, it would not be at all surprising if a flawlessly pure extraterrestrial civilization would regard humanity as a deadly viral outbreak that either needs to be rehabilitated or contained. So what can we logically infer from this? Even if we set aside all belief in God, hell, and religion, just on the basis of those two premises alone, which most of us generally agree to, at some point, humanity will either need to be rehabilitated or else contained if we wish to limit a never-ending future history of harm. With regard to rehabilitation within Christianity, that was the central message of Jesus Christ for the individual. Through spiritual rebirth and a relationship with God, who is the origin of beauty, love, music, and justice. But Christ often spoke of something that we call hell as the other option for constraining evil. We might rationally, even if reluctantly, infer from those two premises that if a human being willfully resists rehabilitation, then they must be constrained in order to limit the harm done to others. But there still remain some pretty huge objections. First, why does the containment of evil have to last for all eternity? Why couldn't God simply cause people who resist rehabilitation, cause them to cease to exist, like delete them, for example? Second, why would the final containment of evil, which we're calling hell, have to be so awful? Why not contain evil in a place that was pleasant, with wonderful weather all the time, and an enormous amount of fun activities to do? After all, constraining evil people from harming others does not mean that we have to torture them or even be unpleasant to them. These are good and valid questions, so in my next two videos, let's think about those questions and see what rationally emerges. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, or at least found it thought-provoking. And if you did, please share it, or you can leave a comment in the section below. And also, don't forget to hit the like button.